For this assignment, I chose Scenario 3, the warm inland valley vineyard. This vineyard has a warm to hot climate, lots of sunshine, fertile soil, and access to irrigation. Based on those conditions, I would choose to plant Grenache. I chose Grenache because it can handle warmer to drier conditions. Since this vineyard gets a lot of heat and sunshine, I think it makes sense to choose a grape that is already suited for the type of environment instead of trying to fight against the natural conditions of the land. One thing I would have to watch is how quickly the grapes ripen. Too much heat could cause higher sugar levels and lower acidity, which could affect the balance of the wine. I would monitor the grapes closely and make sure they are harvested before they become too ripe. My first management decision would be canopy management. Since there is so much heat and sunshine, I would leave enough leaves around the grapes to give them some natural protection. I wouldn't want the grapes sitting in direct sunlight all day and possibly getting damaged by the heat. At the same time, I would still want enough airflow to keep the vines healthy. My second decision would be harvest timing and controlling the amount of fruit on the vines. Because the soil is fertile, the vines could grow quickly and produce a lot of grapes. I wouldn't necessarily want the biggest harvest possible. I would rather find a good balance between producing enough grapes to make the vineyard successful and maintaining the quality of the fruit. Sustainability and an indigenous perspective. This is probably the part of the scenario that stands out to me the most. From an indigenous perspective, I was taught to respect the land and appreciate what it provides. To me, having access to something doesn't mean we should use as much as we want. That is especially true when it comes to water. Even though this vineyard has reliable irrigation, my sustainability priority would be water conservation. I would use drip irrigation so water goes directly where it is needed and monitor the vines instead of watering more than necessary. I also think sustainability means looking beyond what we can get from the vineyard right now. We should think about what condition we are leaving the land in for our future generations. I would want the vineyard to be profitable, but I would also want to know that we're taking care of the soil and water while doing it. The biggest trade-off for me would be quality versus quantity. With fertile soil and available water, it might be tempting to grow as many grapes as possible because more grapes could mean more wine, potentially more money. I would probably choose somewhat lower yields and focus more on quality. I also look at this from the perspective of not taking more from the land just because we can. There needs to be a balance. The vineyard still has to make money, but it doesn't mean every decision has to be about producing the largest amount possible. Overall, I would plant Grenache and focus on canopy management, careful harvest timing, and conserving water. What I learned from this scenario is that you have to work with the environment you are given instead of trying to make the land into something that it isn't. For me, a successful vineyard would be about finding a balance between producing a good wine, running a successful business, and respecting the land and water that makes it possible.